Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome to LoopLIVE. It is Wednesday, January 17th. We're glad you're joining us. We have people tuning in on Facebook, on YouTube, on Periscope. And hey, I've got my phone right here and I'm watching the comments section. So if you're watching this, why don't you just type in where you're from, where you're watching from. It's always fun to see kind of where all over the world people are tuning in from. So we've got Eric Wright from North Carolina, what's up? Luis from Pasadena, Texas. Gary McDonald from Winchester, what's up? Sean Thomas, Virginia. Kelly from Ohio. Christine Loy from Columbus. Oh man, Rhett from Illinois. Mary from Central Texas. Luke, what's up you guys? Thank you guys so much for joining. We're glad that you're here. I'm gonna have my phone here. If you guys have questions, you can go ahead and comment. And as we go through this, this video, I'm gonna be answering your questions and we're gonna dive into Ableton Live. My name is Matt McCoy and I'm the founder of loopcommunity.com. I'm also an Ableton Live certified trainer, and so I'm really passionate about teaching worship leaders how to use tracks in worship. And I've been using Ableton Live in worship since 2001. So back then it was like Live version 2, and now we're almost at Live version 10. So I've been using the software for a long time, and I'm really excited and just super excited to teach worship leaders how to use it, because I know that when I first started, it seemed really intimidating and kind of scary, especially when you think about, well, I just want to lead worship. I don't want to be thinking about a computer and software and all this stuff. I want to just be leading worship. And so it can seem really scary and intimidating, but it does not have to be. And so what we're going to do today, for about an hour, I'm going to show you how to use Ableton Live. We're going to walk through it together. We're going to build a worship set from scratch. And when you leave this webinar, you're going to feel really confident about how Ableton Live works and what you can do with it. Now here's the thing. Today we're only going to be scratching the surface of what this software can do. It can do so much. I mean, you can automate lyrics, automate lighting, have it make coffee for you. I mean, you can do tons of stuff. But we're going to just give you all the basics, everything you need just to get going with Ableton Live, which is why this is called Ableton Live for Beginners. So let's go and just talk about Ableton Live. I'm going to show you, if you go to ableton.com, we're going to talk about, there's 3 different versions of Ableton Live. There is Intro, Standard, and Suite. The Intro version is usually $99, but actually right now it's $79, so that's a good deal. And then it goes all the way up to Suite, which is about $600. Here's the thing. Everything I show you today, you're going to be able to do in Live Intro. The other ones just give you more sounds. If you're going to be making your own music, making your own tracks, then you might want to use Standard or Suite. But if you're just running tracks and you're just getting into it, you can start with Intro. It works with Mac and PC exactly the same. So whatever platform you're on, you're good to go. Today, for my demos, I'm actually going to be using the latest version of Live called Live 10. And Live 10 is going to be coming pretty soon to the public for everyone. But you'll kind of get a sneak peek then on how Live 10 looks. But what's cool is if you purchase Live 9 now, you get a free upgrade to Live 10. So the prices right now are a really great deal. Live Intro at $79. And here's what's awesome too, is that for everybody watching this webinar, we're actually going to be giving away a free copy of Live 10 Standard, which is worth almost $500. So what you're going to want to do is in the description on this video, there's a link that you can click to go ahead and enter for that giveaway. But we're going to be giving away Live 10 Standard. So check that out. Okay, so once you have Ableton Live, all right, you've got the software, but now you need tracks. And so that's where Loop Community comes into play. Loop Community is a website where you can go and search for a song and then download tracks for any of those songs. So let's just say I'm looking for This Is Amazing Grace. I can just search the website here. It gives me different options, so I can choose, the Bethel version or Phil Wickham. Let's choose the Phil Wickham version. And now I can choose from, at Loop Community, we sell the original master tracks, meaning that these are the actual tracks from the album. We sell premium tracks, which are tracks that our studio records, and they sound very close to the album. And then we sell community tracks. And community tracks are made by worship leaders from all over the world. And this is cool because it gives you kind of a different vibe for different songs. Maybe you want to change it up one weekend and have a different sound for a song. Well, you could download a community track, And once you download these tracks, they start at 20 bucks. So that's not bad. Or the master here for This Is Amazing Grace is $30. Once you download that, you're going to get a zip file to your computer. And inside of that zip file, there's going to be a bunch of audio files, like wave files. And you're going to have a different wave file for each instrument. You'll have drums.wave, bass.wave, acoustic.wave, and we're going to use those in Ableton Live. So all right, you get Ableton Live from ableton.com, you buy the tracks from loopcommunity.com. Now let's go and just dive into Live 10, and we're going to build a worship set from scratch. And you're going to feel really good about this when we're done. So let's go to Live 10. When you first open it up, it looks like this, all right? That can look really scary, but it doesn't have to be. So here's what we're looking at. Ableton Live has two views to it. There's a view called Session View, which is what we're looking at right now, and there's a view called Arrangement View, which you can get to by just hitting the Tab key or by hitting the little icon in the top right corner that has horizontal lines. Arrangement View looks just like any other music software like Logic, GarageBand, Pro Tools, where you have a timeline that goes from left to right, and you could bring in your audio files and they just run down a timeline. Now you can use both views to run tracks, and I might even, if we have time at the end, show you a little bit how to run tracks in Arrangement View. But personally, I think Arrangement View is really great for if you're going to be recording your own tracks, or if you're going to be editing tracks that you purchase, like you want to chop them up and maybe move the chorus around. Arrangement View is awesome for that. But I'm going to build a set today in Session View. This is what I use when I lead worship. And I think that there's a lot of flexibility you can have in Session View. But here's the thing. Honestly, you can run tracks in Session View or Arrangement View, and they're both awesome. And they both have pros and cons to them. So that's the cool thing about this software, is there's so many different ways to get the same thing done. So let's look at Session View. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to kind of just clean up our view here. So when you first open up Live, it gives you 2 MIDI tracks and 2 audio tracks. I'm going to go ahead and just delete the MIDI tracks. And I'm also going to delete the reverb and delay track over here, so kind of clean up our screen. I'm going to hide this by just clicking the little I/O button down here in the bottom right corner. And so what Session View has is it has tracks. And these are the vertical columns, or like the mixer, right? And you can think of these as your different instruments. So this could be drums, and this one could be bass, or acoustic, or guitar. So I'm going to delete those, and we're just going to start with 1. And then what you have in Session View are what are called scenes. And they are the horizontal rows that go across right here. Now think of a scene as a song. So right now I have 8 songs, and I have 4 tracks. So for our worship set today, we're actually just going to do 3 songs. So I'm just going to hit the delete key on those. And now we have 3 songs, all right? And we have 4 tracks. But I'm going to just delete these. We're going to have 1 track to start with. So we're kind of set up now. We have 3 songs, 1 track. Now let's talk about how do we bring in the audio files into Live. Over on the left-hand side of the screen, this is called Live's file browser. And this is where you can access all sorts of cool stuff. On the left-hand side, you'll find categories, which is where you'll find sounds. So if you're looking for different drum sounds, you will find that over here. Now, if you're making music with Live, you're going to use this a lot. You can have your third-party plugins, keyboard sounds, Omnisphere, whatever you're running. It's all going to show up here on the left side. That's under categories. Now, today we're not going to be making tracks, but we probably will have a future class on that. So stay tuned. So what we're going to look at is down here, it's called Places. And Places is a way to access files on your computer. So you can click Add Folder, and you can search any folder on your computer and add it as a shortcut over here. So I already did that, and I added it as a shortcut to a folder on my computer called My Worship Songs. Creative, right? All right. So now inside of there, I have all of my purchases from Loop Community. So if I look at this folder here, I have all my premium tracks. And so let's just look at our first song, which is going to be Open Up the Heavens, all right? I'm going to open this up. When you download a track from Loop Community, this is what you're going to see. You're going to have a folder, and we name our files very carefully. We name them with the song title, And then next to that, you'll see the tempo, which is 99 BPM, and you'll see the key. We're in the key of D. And then you'll see you have wave files for every single different instrument, all right? And you can click on it to preview it if you'd like. You can kind of hear what it is. So this is the electric guitar track, or there's the acoustic track. There is the click track. All right. So let's go and just start building a set. All right. My first song is going to be Open Up the Heavens. I'm going to right click on one over here. I'm going to go to rename, and I'm going to call this Open Up the Heavens and hit enter. Now let's go and start bringing in our tracks. My first track, I'm going to rename this and call this cues. And this is the track where all of my band cues are going to go. So where it says verse, 2, 3, 4, those are all going to be in this track. So I'm going to highlight this and right click, and you can even change the color. So I'm going to make it red. And let's go and just drag in the cue track. Just click and drag and drop. Now I'm going to start bringing in my other instruments. You can bring them in one at a time, like here's acoustic, and then here's bass. And notice that when I drag and drop it, it creates a new track for me. I can right click here and rename and call this acoustic. If you want to be really organized, that's a good thing to do. So acoustic and bass, you can do that. Or if you want to save time, you can bring in multiple tracks at once. I'm going to hold the command key, and I'm going to select all the tracks that I want. So I'm selecting, we're just going to bring everything in for this demo. All right? And now I'm going to drag and drop. Now notice that it's trying to drop them in right now vertically, but we want them to drop in horizontally. So if you hold command, it lets you drop them in horizontally. And it created a bunch of different tracks for me for Open Up the Heavens. Now let me kind of demystify for you what all these little icons are, the stop icon, the play icon. Notice that each track has a play icon on it. You don't want to use these because what will end up happening is they're all going to start playing. I'm having to click them all individually at once. So they're all playing, but it's completely out of time with each other, and that's not great. So, spacebar, by the way, will stop the track. What you want to do is instead of using these play buttons, you want to use the play button on the actual song itself. This is called a launch button. So when we press this, we're basically saying play all of the audio files in this row at the same time. So I'm going to hit play. And now all of them are playing. 2, 3, 4. And the tracks are now in time with each other. Cool, right? Now let's go ahead and bring in another song. So our next song, I'm going to right click and rename, and we're going to do This Is Amazing Grace. And I believe I have a master track for that, so I'm going to go to my masters, and I can right click and go to This Is Amazing Grace. One cool thing with Live 10 now is you can actually color code these. So you can right click and tag these as maybe blue, and now over here under collections I can click on blue, and it shows me anything that was tagged with blue, which is kind of nice. You can rename those to be whatever you want them to be. Makes finding files really easy. So let's bring in This Is Amazing Grace. I'm going to bring in the cue track here. All right. Notice that it made that clip red because the track title was red. That's also a new feature in Live 10. Let's drag in the rest of the files, hold command to drop them in horizontally, and let's hit play to see if that sounds right. 2, 3, 4. Okay, cool, so my track's playing. Let's do one more song. We're gonna do Faithful to the End. All right, and I'm gonna go find my tracks. So this is my next song. I think I have a premium for this. Yes, Faithful to the End. All right, I'm gonna do cues. And then let's just bring in everything else. Now, if you're actually using tracks on a weekend, I mean, for this demo, I'm bringing in every instrument. But on an actual weekend where you're leading worship, you may wanna only bring in tracks that you need. So you might only need the piano, or you might only need the keyboard, or just the loop or the shaker. But just for this demo, we're using everything. So let's hit play, and we should have Faithful to the End going. Verse 2. Okay, 3, great. 4. So one thing you'll notice is that we don't have a metronome. So let's talk about how do we actually get a metronome going on these tracks. Well, I'm gonna, in the top left corner of the screen, this is your metronome control center, all right? Over here, you can tap in a tempo. You can change the tempo by just clicking and dragging here, or by typing it in. This button turns the metronome on and off. This is your time signature, so we're in 4/4. And so let's go and just turn on the click, and let's hit play. And we're gonna play Open Up the Heavens.
Intro 2.
So you'll notice that the problem is that the click is not in time with the tracks. And that's because Open Up the Heavens is at 99 BPM, and we name all of our files with the BPM in them. So Open Up the Heavens is at 99, and the metronome was playing at 114. So that's a problem. So what we're going to do is we just need to tell Ableton Live, when we start Open Up the Heavens, change the tempo to 99. So it's really easy to do. You just right-click on Open Up the Heavens and go to Edit Launch Tempo. And then you can type in 99. Now when I hit play on Open Up the Heavens, you'll notice that the metronome is going to change to 99. And the metronome is going to be in time with the tracks. All right. You can also do this with the time signature. So I can go to Edit Launch Time Signature, and let's just say I want it to be, in 2/8. Now the time signature changed as well, and the click is in time with the tracks. Awesome. Now we have to do the same thing for the other songs in the set, otherwise it's going to stay at 99. It doesn't change tempos until you tell it to change tempos. So let's right-click on This Is Amazing Grace, and we'll rename this, and we'll call this, so you can actually type this in if you're a shortcut. You can type in semicolon, This Is Amazing Grace, 98 BPM. All right? And actually, I'm going to also set the time signature to be 4/4. And let's do the same thing for Faithful to the End. Right-click, Edit Launch Tempo. This one's at 72. Edit Launch Time Signature. We'll do this one at 2/8. So now when I play This Is Amazing Grace, the click changes to 98, and it's in time with my track. Now, another new feature in Live 10, which is pretty cool, is that you can change the click sound. So by just clicking here and going to click or wood, let's change it to wood so you can hear what that sounds like. There's the wood click sound. Or let's try click. So it's kind of a more subtle. Let's just change it back to the default one, classic. You can also change in metronome settings the rhythm of the click as well. So there's some more features with the metronome, which is pretty awesome. So we have a set list, all right? And now I can hit play on these songs and play through. Now, if I want, I can reorder the songs. And this is I think that this is a huge pro for running tracks in session view. In arrangement view, it's not as easy to move songs around last minute. But in session view, it's really easy. So let's just say I decided, actually, we want to do This Is Amazing Grace first. Well, I can just click and drag This Is Amazing Grace to the top, and it moves all of my tracks with it. Or I can click and drag and move Open Up the Heavens down, and I can reorder my set any way I want. And I think that's a huge plus of session view. If you want to get crazy with color coding, you can by just highlighting the tracks like this, holding Shift, right-click, and then you can change the color of all the tracks if you'd like to do that. So you can get as crazy as you want with coloring. I'm not going to dive into that right now. So we have our set list. We can reorder them. We have different, click tempos. Now, let's just talk about adjusting the volume and mixing the different tracks, because sometimes you'll find that maybe one track is louder than the other, or maybe you're in rehearsal and last minute you're like, you know what, we don't want that individual piano part, so we're going to turn it down. Let's just talk about that a little bit. So let's look at Faithful to the End. I'm going to hit play or launch. All right.
Verse 2, 3.
And I'm actually going to hide this live file browser to give us some more screen real estate. Now we're in session view, all right. Now I can hit solo down here to solo different tracks. That's a pad. Now let's just say I wanted the volume of this individual track louder. You could use this, but the problem with using the actual
Verse,
mixer volume
2,
is that it's
3,
also going to adjust
4.
the volume of the clip in Open Up the Heavens. So I think it's best to not use these at all. I would never touch these. So to reset it to default, you can just click it and hit delete, and it will reset any setting back to default. You can also pan tracks like this, but again, I wouldn't do that because it's going to affect everything in that track, at least for this example. So if you want to turn up the volume or turn down the volume of an individual clip, you just double click on it, and this brings up the clip overview window for that specific instrument. And down here, there is a fader that you can use to turn up the volume of that instrument. So let's hit play so you can listen to it. So I can turn it up, you know, if I need it to be way loud, or turn it down. It's good to adjust your volumes on the clip level, not on the actual mixer level. Same thing with muting. If you want to mute a track, you don't mute it here, because if you mute it there, it's going to affect all of your other songs. So if you want to mute a clip, you could just delete it. But when I'm in rehearsal and I'm like, oh yeah, my piano player is playing that part, I just right click and go deactivate. And now that clip is not going to play at all. So let's just activate it again. So that's a good way to adjust volumes and mixing of individual tracks. All right. Let's go ahead and hit play on that and see how that sounds. Now, if you want to adjust the volume of all the clips at once, because sometimes that happens, maybe a whole song is quiet. I'm going to just select, I'm going to hold shift and select all of the clips for Faithful. And I'm going to turn up the track like this. Let's hit play on it so we can hear what's going on. That's always helpful.
Verse 2,
All right.
3.
And now I'm going to go ahead and
4.
just turn up this volume. You can see it's cranked now. Probably a little bit too loud. So I'm going to reset that back to default. All right. Whoop, if you don't unclick, it will drag again. Okay, what you could also do if you want is you could actually put a compressor on the master. So I can go to Audio Effects and go to Compressor, and I could put a a gate or even a compressor on the master track. That's always a nice way to get, if you just click and drag and drop it onto the master, that's also a nice way to kind of master all of your tracks so that they're coming out at the same volume.
3, 4.
Let me turn that down a little. Cool. So that's another thing you can do with audio effects. Now, let's just talk about how do we change the tempo of a track. So let's just say that you get into rehearsal and you're like, you know what? This track is way too slow and we need to speed it up. Well, let's actually do that with This Is Amazing Grace, all right? So I'm going to hit play.
Intro 2, 3,
Now,
4.
you might think like, okay, to do this, so this track is actually way too loud, so let's just bring it down and select everything. Let's bring it all down. All right. You might think you could change the tempo here. Like I'm going to go to change here. Let's just say we want to do it at 110.
Intro 2.
Well, the
3,
problem is that
4.
the tracks are still playing at 98, but the metronome changed to 110. So what we're going to do is we're going to use something called warping. And you've probably heard of this if you've gotten into Ableton Live. And what warping is it's a way of time stretching audio. So speeding audio up or slowing audio down without it losing its quality or its timing. And Ableton Live is really good at warping, mainly because this software was actually designed for DJs. So if you've ever heard a remix where there's like two different songs at two different keys, and you want to get those two different songs at the same key and same tempo, then they can use warping to remix them together. So here's what we're going to do. There's a couple of steps that you want to make sure that you do for warping. Otherwise, this can cause some problems for you. In the top left corner of the screen, make sure that this tempo says the original tempo of the track. So the original tempo of This Is Amazing Grace is 98. So I'm going to type that in, hit enter. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of these clips by holding shift, and down here I'm going to press the warp button. Now let me show you what that actually did. I'm going to pull up one of these tracks, like the drums, and I'm going to zoom in, And what warping did is it found every downbeat and it added a marker. And now that it has a marker for every downbeat, it knows how it can change the tempo. So I'm going to hit play
Intro.
or launch.
2, 3, 4.
And you'll notice that now it's in time at 110 BPM. I can on the fly just change the tempo like this by clicking and dragging. All right, you can speed things up.
2, 3, 4.
Pretty awesome. Now, if you want it to sound a little better, because sometimes you might hear with some of these tracks, you might hear some artifacts. It starts to get a little choppy as you're changing the tempo. You can change the warp mode down here to Complex or Complex Pro. If you have live intro, you won't have Complex or Complex Pro, but you could try texture. So let's just change it to Complex and it'll sound a little better. But now that the tracks are warped, I can change the tempo to whatever I want. Now that the tracks are warped, you can also change the key of any of these tracks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight them like this by holding Shift, and there's a little transpose knob here. And I can use this transpose knob to transpose, change the pitch of the tracks. So if we were in B flat originally, I'm going to move this up 1/2 step. So now we're in the key of B.
Intro. 2, 3, 4.
If you want to do it in the key of B, or let's just move this down to the key of C. Again, you want to select all your tracks. Let's go down to the key of A. So you can change the key or the tempo of any track. And Ableton Live makes it really easy to do that using warping. So we've changed keys, changed tempos. Now what we're wondering is, well, all right, so we have our set list. How do we actually connect this stuff to our sound system? And what we're going to do is I'm going to show you some routing options. Now, all you're going to need, now you can get as advanced or beginner with this stuff as you want. What you could do is you could plug in an audio interface and have multiple outputs going out. That's totally fine, and that's very easy to do. Today for this demo, since this is Ableton for beginners, all you need is a cable that looks like this. This is a cable that you can buy on Amazon or Sweetwater, and for like $8 or something. And what it is it goes from a headphone jack to 2 split 1/4 inch cables. So what it's doing is it's taking a stereo signal and it's splitting that stereo signal into 2 mono cables, all right? Now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna plug this into our computer to the headphone jack, all right? And the left side, we're going to send all the click and the cues. And on the right side, we're going to send all the tracks. Now with this cable, you just have to remember that gray is left, and just remember that red is right. Red is right. That's the quick way to remember this. Red is always right. And we're going to plug into a direct box. So you can use 2 direct boxes if you want. For this example, I actually have a stereo DI, which is really nice. And so it has 2 different sides to it. So I can plug in the left side to input 1 and the right side to input 2. And on the back of this DI, you have 2 XLR outs. So you'd plug this into your sound system. One XLR goes to your soundboard, and it has your click and your cues. And then the other XLR has all your tracks. So now your sound guy can adjust the volume of the cues and the click, and then the tracks. You're going to want to send the click and the cues to your band for sure, because everyone needs to hear that. It really will help enhance the sound of your band, and honestly, it helps keep everybody in time. It's a necessity for sure. So plug that in your sound system. It's pretty easy to hook up. Now, once you have it connected, let's look at Ableton Live of how you actually route this stuff. So I'm going to go to Live, and I'm going to go to Preferences. And in Preferences, I'm going to go to Audio. And right here, you can choose your output device. I don't have an interface plugged in right now, so all we're using is the built-in output. It's the headphone jack. Now, this is another really cool new feature of Live 10, is you can actually custom name the outputs of your channels. Ableton, by default, just names left 1 and right 2. But we can actually custom name those. So I'm going to name the left side, which is 1, I'm going to name it to headphone left. And the right side, I'm going to say headphone right. All right? Pretty simple. But that's a cool new feature of Live 10 that you can use. So let's hit OK. And now let's talk about how to actually route these channels. So I can go to, down here in the bottom right corner, there's a little button that says I/O. I/O stands for in and out. So I can open up the in and out settings for all of the different tracks. This looks way confusing, but it's not at all. So the top white boxes here, those are inputs. So if you're recording with Live, then you're going to need those. But we're just going to ignore those for now. We're looking down here where it says audio to. Basically saying, where is this audio going? So right now it says the audio is going to the master. Now my master is over here on the right hand side, and then my master says it's going out 1 and 2, meaning it's going out both sides. What we're going to do is for the cue track, I'm going to change this. I'm going to set it to external output. I'm going to say go to headphone left. All right? And then all my other tracks, I'm going to highlight those like this. And I'm going to set these to go out to headphone right. So now when I play these tracks, we should hear the cues on the left and all the tracks on the right. Now we also need to adjust the output of the metronome. And that happens right here. It's called cue out. So that's just another thing you have to remember. Cue out is the metronome. So set that to left. So now we have our tracks all split. Now another way to do that, if you want, is to actually just have everything going to the master. So the cues, those are going to go out headphone left. The cue out, which is the click, is going to go out left. And my master, I'm going to set that to right. And now I'm going to leave the rest of all these other tracks, I'm going to have them all going to the master. Make sense? So cues are going out left, click is going out left. All my other tracks are going to the master, which the master is going out to the right.
Intro 2, 3, 4.
And so it's split like that. Now you can also, if you'd like, I'm going to set this all back to how it was. You can group tracks. So if I want to maybe put all of my guitars into one group, I can highlight those tracks and right click and go to group tracks. And I could call this group, guitars. And then I can set the output for that specific group, and it will adjust the output for all the guitar tracks. So that makes things really nice and fast, especially for mixing. So that's a basic way to set it up for a sound system. But again, if you want to get more advanced, you could use an interface, and that will give you maybe 8 different outputs. And you could send each different track out of its own output into your sound system, which is pretty awesome. So that's how you can set everything up and connect it and change the outputs. Now let's talk about how do you actually control these tracks. So a couple of different ways you can do this. Now if you're at a church or if you're at a concert, you might see this different ways. You might see a laptop up on stage, maybe back by the drummer, or you might see it maybe at the foot of the worship leader, or you might see it back by the keyboard player. There's a couple ways you can control tracks. First thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you something that Ableton has called key mapping. And what you can do is you can set keyboard shortcuts on your computer keyboard to start and stop different songs. So in the top right corner of the screen, there's a button that says key. I'm going to press that, and anything that you see on the screen that turns orange can be assigned to any key on your computer keyboard. So I'm going to click on Open Up the Heavens, and I'm going to make that 1. I'm going to press 1 on my keyboard, and you'll see that number 1 mapped to that song. This is Amazing Grace is going to be 2. And Faithful to the End is going to be 3. Now I can leave key mapping mode, and I can press 1, and it'll start song 1. If I want to stop the track, I can just press the space bar. I can press button 2, and it starts song 2. Or I can press button 3, and it starts song 3. This is really great if you're just in a
Verse,
rehearsal and you're
2,
like, hey,
3,
can you,
4.
we need to adjust the volume of that one. Seems a little loud. I'm gonna just click that and turn it down. Hey, can you start song 2? And they can just hit button 2 and it'll start that track. Pretty awesome, pretty easy. But you can also use a Midi controller to control anything here in Live. And it could be any Midi controller. Today I'm actually going to show you the LoopTimus foot controller that we have. This is called the LoopTimus Mini, and you can get this at looptimus.com. And this is a really easy foot controller that we designed specifically for worship leaders who don't have their hands free. Maybe you're a guitar player and you don't want to be, messing with the computer, and you want to just control it with your feet. Well, you can use the LoopTimus Mini to control Ableton Live pretty simply. So let's go and just connect this all to Ableton Live, and I'll show you how it works. So I'm going to use this USB cable. I'm going to plug it into my computer. And then I'm going to plug in the LoopTimus Mini. I've got a yellow one. We have these in 5 different colors. I'm going to plug that in. All right, and now that that's plugged in, I'm going to go ahead and go to Live Preferences and go to MIDI. And you should see the LoopTimus automatically show up in this list. Now let me explain these 3 different options here, because this is important. Track is if you're maybe using a MIDI device to play an instrument inside of Live. So if I had like a piano plugged in and I wanted to play a pad from the piano, then I would want to make sure that track is turned on. In this case, we're not doing that, so I'm going to turn it off. Sync is if you're wanting to sync multiple different MIDI devices together to Live. And then remote is if you're going to be using the MIDI device as a remote control, which we're going to be doing with the LoopTimus. So make sure that remote is turned on for the LoopTimus. Now all I'm going to do is, it's very similar to key mapping, but I'm going to go here to the top right corner, and where it says MIDI, I'm going to press MIDI. And anything that you see on the screen that turned purple can now be controlled by any button on the LoopTimus Mini. So let me go ahead and set this up. I'm going to click on Open Up the Heavens, and I can map a button to open up the heavens if I want, or This is Amazing Grace, or Faithful to the End. If you need to clear those MIDI mappings, you can just delete them like that, clicking it and deleting. Or over here on the left side, you can highlight them and delete all the MIDI mappings at once. It's a fun shortcut. So what I'm going to do for this is I'm going to make my first button, I'm going to make it play, so the global play button. And then I'm going to make my next button, the button in the middle of the LoopTimus Mini, I'm going to make that my emergency stop. Basically, if I need to stop the tracks, I'm going to compress that and it'll kill all the tracks. And then I'm going to make the button after that the next button, like go to the next song. And you can do that by clicking on this little down arrow and mapping LoopTimus to that down arrow. So now I can go to the top of my set. I can press button 1 to start song 1. I can hit stop
2, 3.
to stop the track. I can press the next button to go to the next song in my set, and hit play to start the next song. All right?
Verse.
Actually, I wasn't selected. You actually have to pre-select the actual scene when you first start your set. So let me go ahead and hit play. All right, hit stop, hit next, hit play, and to start and stop the track, I think I actually had the wrong MIDI mapping on that one. Let's MIDI map it. Play is going to be this button, global stop here, and then next is this button. Let's hit play, and then hit stop, and let's hit next, and play, which starts Faithful to the End.
Verse.
Cool.
2.
So you can
3,
use a MIDI controller. It could be
4.
any MIDI controller. It could be an audio keyboard. It could be a chord nano key. It could be a foot controller like this. Now you can also run all these tracks in arrangement view, which is also really cool. And to do that, I'm just going to go to arrangement view. I'm going to just show you real quick one way you could do that with arrangement view. So I'm actually going to go to File, New, and we're going to start with a brand new set. I'm going to go to arrangement view. Let's go ahead and clear some of these tracks. And we're going to do this really quickly just so I can show you one other way to do this. There's a million ways to do the same thing in Live, and that's what's awesome about it. There's tons of stuff you can do. Let's go ahead and bring in This Is Amazing Grace. One thing that's also really important when you first install Ableton Live on your computer is you want to go to Live Preferences and make sure under the Warp tab that Auto Warp Long Samples is turned off. If you have that turned on, when you bring in these audio files, Ableton Live is going to trust me, what's going to happen is when you hit play, none of the tracks are in sync. And we get customer support requests about that all the time. Hey, I brought tracks in, none of them are in sync with each other. And we're like, hey, make sure Auto Warp Long Samples is turned off. If that's off, then you're good to go, all right? So now let's go and just drag in the tracks. Before I do that, I'm going to set the tempo to 98. And let's just go ahead and bring in my tracks. I'm going to bring in the Q track first, like this, and we can rename this if we'd like. And let's go ahead and just bring in everything else. I'm going to hold Shift, Select, hold Command to drag and drop everything in vertically. So now, Arrangement View kind of gives you an overview of the whole song, which is kind of cool. Let's turn the metronome on. Let's make sure everything is synced up. Cool. Now what you can do is you can get in here and add section markers for every section of the song. So I can zoom in by just clicking and dragging down. And let's just go ahead and hit play
Intro,
here.
2,
So this is the
3,
intro.
4.
If I click here, there's a little button in the top right corner that says Set. If I press Set, it's going to add a marker. And I can rename that marker to Intro. Let's add another one over here. All right, so this is the verse. So I'm going to hit Set. I'm going to rename this and call it Verse. And let's just go over here. Let's see what this is. This is another verse. So I hit Set. I'm going to add a marker. Here's the chorus.
3, 4.
All right. I'm going to rename it to the chorus. Now I could keep doing that for the entire set if I want, for the whole songs. For the whole song. Now I could bring in multiple songs and back them up down this timeline as well if you want. But what's really cool about these markers is that now you can actually jump around to the different sections in the song. So let's just say I start the song.
Intro 2, 3.
And if I want to do the chorus, I can just double click on the chorus. And it jumps to the chorus in time with the click. Or jump to the verse. Now you can as well map a Midi controller to all those markers. So we have a larger controller called the LoopLIVE. It's bigger than this one. It has 6 buttons on it. And you can actually use that to maybe map every different section of a song. So I would just go to Midi and click on the little marker and press a button on the controller to map that controller to that section. So now with your feet, you could just press the chorus button and it'll jump to the chorus. Now, you can do the exact same thing in Session View, in this view. And we have some videos about that on our YouTube channel if you just go to youtube.com/loopcommunity. And you can find that video where I talk about how to actually add different sections inside of Session View. But hopefully that gives you a good idea of the 2 different views. Arrangement View, what's really cool about this view is you could build a whole set with crossfades and everything, and you could just hit play and let it run through the whole set if you want. Maybe that's cool for maybe a big Easter production. You could have your whole set pre-programmed with fades and everything. You don't even have to think about it. But like I said, customizing it gets a little harder, because if I had a song down here at the far right of the screen and I wanted to move it to the beginning, it just makes it a little more tricky to move the song around. But you can do it. So Arrangement View gives you a lot of customization options. But Session View makes it really easy to drag around the set list, move clips around, do all sorts of things. So both views are awesome. I prefer Session View, and I've used Arrangement View a few times for bigger productions. If you're going to want to get into automating lighting or automating lyrics, then you might want to use Arrangement View, because it just is really easy to do that way. You can also use Arrangement View to run videos. So you could run a video along with these tracks. It's crazy. Honestly, we're just scratching the surface today of what you can do with it. But hopefully, in this session, you've learned how the main functions of Ableton Live work, what you can do with it, or or at least how to build a set list, and you could get going this week with it. You could build a set list in Ableton Live, have your tracks in there, use a controller, route the audio out, and hopefully this makes it a little less scary because it's really a great software to use, and it can look